Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Robert Allen, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Petty Officer Joshua O'Hanlon. 81 years ago today, on the 19th of November 1941, HMAS Sydney was lost with all hands following a close quarters engagement with the German raider HSK Cormoran. Sydney had been celebrated for her successful battles in the Mediterranean, where she famously sank the Italian cruiser Bartolomeo Colleoni. Returning to Australia in February 1941, Sydney and her crew received a hero's welcome. On completion of a brief period at home that included a change of command, Sydney was tasked with escorting troop ships to Southeast Asia via an Indian Ocean route along the coast of Western Australia. It was during the return passage of one of these taskings that Sydney encountered Cormoran. Disguised as a Dutch merchant vessel, Cormoran used the deception to gain advantage by closing the range between the two ships and allowing her to bring all her armament to bear. The initial salvos were telling and contributed to the loss of Sydney with its full war complement of 645 men. This remains Australia's worst naval disaster. HSK Cormoran was also sunk in the engagement. 317 of its crew of 397 were rescued. For almost 7 decades, the final resting place of Sydney and her crew remained unknown. The fate of Sydney became one of Australia's greatest wartime mysteries, a source of controversy and many conspiracy theories. In 2008, the wreckage of Sydney and Cormoran were found off the coast of Western Australia, about 22 kilometres apart. A commission of inquiry was held by the Department of Defence, and a later expedition in 2015 documented the wreck sites and revealed more about the last moments of the ship. This evening, we remember the HMAS Sydney and pay our respects to the crew commemorated here on the Roll of Honour. We warmly welcome the family of Able Seaman John Salmon, whose story will be told shortly. We also warmly welcome Mr. Jim Quick, President of the HMAS Sydney Association and fellow association members who are in attendance, and Mr. Alex McGowan, representing the Naval Association of Australia, ACT section. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Return and Services Leagues of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. Australia's Federation Guard is the tri-service ceremonial unit of the Australian Defence Force. They provide a ceremonial presence at civil and military events and during visits to Australia by foreign dignitaries. The Guard will now dismount the catafalque party from the tomb of the unknown Australian soldier.
Party Gone.
If you are able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem.
Catapult party, attention. Catapult party, present. Up.
Australians, oh let us rejoice, for we are one and free. With golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is got by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Catapult party, shoulder. Catapult party, order.
If able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Able Seaman John Salmon. John Salmon was born on the 21st of December 1921 in Sydney, the suburb of Homebush. Known as Jack, he was the second eldest of 8 children born to railway employee Reginald Salmon and his wife Kathleen. As a young man, Jack developed a passion for horse racing. When the Second World War broke out in 1939, he was living in the Sydney suburb of Croydon. Jack Salmon enlisted in the Royal Australian Navy on the 12th of February 1940. He was assigned to the rank of ordinary seaman and proceeded to HMAS Penguin, the depot and accommodation ship based at HMAS Garden in Sydney. He remained there until July 1940, when, having completed his initial training, he was posted to the RAN's premier training depot in Victoria, HMAS Cerberus. By October, Salmon had almost completed his training. He wrote home to his father. "Just a few lines to let you know I'm still alive and well. I went to the races last fortnight and won £2 in the first 2 races and lost it all after that. I want you to come to the races with me when I get back. I've only got 1 week to go and I've finished my course, but I think I'll be here for another week to prepare for sea, that is, getting gas masks and doing gas drill. I will close now, hoping to see you soon. Loving son, Jack." Salmon completed his training at Cerberus before the year was out, and in February 1941 was posted to his first operational ship, joining the crew of the light cruiser HMAS Sydney. By this time, Salmon had been promoted to Able Seaman and was ready to begin active service. His initial sea time took place at the end of February, when the cruiser sailed from Sydney to Fremantle to undertake routine convoy escort duties off the coast of Western Australia. Over the following months, Sydney continued her patrol and escort work on the Australian station, escorting famous ships such as the Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth in southern Australian waters throughout early September. In late September, Sydney began operating off the West Australian coast, escorting convoys from Fremantle to the Sunda Strait in the Netherlands East Indies. Arriving at the Sunda Strait, Sydney would hand the convoy over to other Allied warships that would then continue escorting the ships to Singapore. On the 6th of November 1941, Salmon wrote what would be his last letter home. "Dearest Mother, how are you keeping these days? I hope you're well and not overdoing it at your work. I will come in and have a free feast when I get home. We found a mine on a beach at a port we are in today. They sent some sailors over to explode it, and I had to take them over in a motorboat, so I saw everything that happened. They dug out all the sand from underneath it, and every shovel he took, we nearly died thinking it was going to blow up. Then 2 fishermen came on board and said there were 2 more floating not far from where we were anchored, so it looks like someone knew we were coming here and tried to trap us. Everything is okie dokie now, so we will most likely be home for Christmas, providing nothing spectacular happens in the near future." 4 days later, on the 11th of November 1941, Sydney steamed from Fremantle, escorting the troop ship Zealandia, carrying troops of the Australian 8th Division. On the 17th of November, Sydney handed over the troop ship escort over to HMAS Durban before commencing return passage to Fremantle. On the afternoon of 19th of November 1941, Sydney sighted what appeared to be a merchant ship some 200 kilometres west of Shark Bay, Western Australia, and closed to investigate. Sydney was signalled the ship to identify itself while continuing to close with the vessel as she did so. The ship replied that it was a Dutch steamer, Strat-Malacca, but in fact she was a heavily armed German merchant raider, Cormoran, in disguise. Cormoran had already sunk 10 unsuspecting merchant ships in the Indian Ocean and taken another as a prize. Sydney drew closer, lingering her advantage of superior gunnery and range, demanding that the ship identify itself with its allotted secret call sign. The captain of the German raider, Theodor Detmers, did not have the response. With Sydney at about 900 yards on his starboard beam, or at point-blank range for naval gunnery, he ordered the immediate hoisting of the German battle ensign and opened fire. In the battle that followed, both ships were mortally damaged. Sydney torpedoed and a blaze sank during the early hours of the 20th of November 1941 with the loss of all 645 men on board, including Able Seaman Jack Salmon. The crew of Cormorant abandoned her ship before the raider was scuttled. Approximately 3/4 of the crew survived to become prisoners of war. With no grave but the sea, Able Seaman Salmon and his comrades are commemorated on the Naval Memorial in Plymouth, England, among more than 23,000 service personnel who have no known grave. Able Seaman Jack Salmon was 19 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is one but many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Able Seaman Jack Salmon, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They have no grave but the cruel sea, no flowers lay at their head. A rusting hulk is their tombstone, a fast on the ocean bed. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Catapult party present. Catapult party shoulder.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget.
Catapult party in woods. 10. Catapult party, quick, march.
We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director and staff, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.